Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 Podcast. We are here talking today with our Family Crimes and VAWA unit, Joanna Dimas. Joanna, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm introducing her first in front of these guys because they're heckling me before we go on the air. So,
wow.
Sheriff Wagner, Chief Deputy Ben Houchin. Thanks for keeping it together.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I think this is number 40 for me because I missed one.
Yes, you're one short. So
I am one short.
I think I'm one short too. Yeah.
Episode 41, but it's a pretty good average though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of games that you're in for. So
a lot of playing time.
Yep.
About 98%.
A lot of playing time. Well, Joanna, we're glad that you're here. Before we talk about VAWA and family crime specifically, let's let our listeners know a little bit about you. So, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? How did you get here to us?
So I grew up in McCook, Nebraska, mostly. I graduated high school there, and then I went to Omaha with the intention of getting my cosmetology degree, which I did, but that kind of, my focus shifted when I had kids. Mm-hmm. And then I started working at the 911 Communication Center here in Lincoln. And I'd always had an interest in law enforcement. It just wasn't good timing. But once my kids started school, things kind of started to shift for me, and I was able to look into what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah. So you decided to get into law enforcement specifically. What was it about LSO?
Well, during my time at the communication center, I was a dispatcher. So I did radio dispatch for the sheriff's office. And the deputies were always extremely respectful. The sergeants were easy to work with. They were definitely made us feel like we were part of actually a team. And so I think that that's kind of a quality of the sheriff's office that I've noticed too since being here. It's very important how you treat other people and how we show that we care about other people, whether they're their deputies or the public, or like people like the communication center who are having to deal with their own stressful things in their environment.
Cool. Well,
yeah, we've always thought that's your lifeline.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't want to upset those people because they'll be the ones calling and getting you help when you need it. So it's a good idea to be nice to them.
I remember one officer that seemed to be always very rude to the dispatchers, and he got about every crappy call that came down the pike.
Yeah, that too.
And I'm thinking, looking back, you could see the handwriting on the wall. If it was a bad call, run away, or, calls that nobody really wants to take, he was going to get them.
And you can hear the smile through the radio as they're dispatching it. So, yeah. Well, we're glad that you found us, and we're glad that you're here. So since you've been with the sheriff's office, you've done a few different things. Talk to us just kind of how the deputy life has gone for you.
So I feel like overall my experience has been really, really positive. I was on patrol before moving into criminal and learned a lot. I had a really good group of experienced deputies that I was able to work with during that time and learn a lot from. And then recently I've been able to become part of the defensive tactics teaching program.
Yeah.
So I got qualified for a couple different things over the summer, and it's been really interesting to try to learn and navigate teaching others something new.
We've had people rolling around with some jiu-jitsu stuff lately.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a step up for our defensive tactics game, and glad you're part. It was fun doing that for in-service, and I've heard good things from everybody. I got to go out for that. Ben, have you gotten to do the jiu-jitsu yet?
I've watched several things on that. I've kind of retired from that, John, if you need to really want to know the truth.
All right. Well, if you ever want to roll around, we'll show you how it works. But okay. Someday.
Yes, I promise you, I will go out there, and we got new mats out at our place, so everybody can be safe and not get hurt. So that's a positive.
Yes. Well, we'll cash in the rain check another day for
There we go.
for the jiu-jitsu stuff. But we're not here to talk about jiu-jitsu. We're here to talk about VAWA and family crimes, and that's the role that you're in now. It's part of our criminal investigations unit. And help us out. What does VAWA stand for?
So it's actually the Violence Against Women Act.
Okay. And more broadly, we call that family crimes now, because it's more than just women that are involved in the crimes you're investigating.
Yes. Yep.
But that's your full-time gig now.
Yes. For just over a year. So the end of October was a year.
Awesome. Well, what is that unit or that position, and why do we have one?
So initially, it started. Senator Biden at the time in '94 was the one who actually signed this act into existence, or he wrote the proposal for it anyway. Okay. So the idea was to have more of a joint response to sexual assault and domestic violence, and to acknowledge that they were actually federal crimes. So that's kind of where it started. Here, I feel like it's really broadened into kind of like you said, the family crimes. So I'm working with survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault survivors, children, families, and then multiple other agencies that also provide the support that these families need when they're going through tough stuff.
Right. So the Special Victims Unit, we talk about that informally, but that's kind of what you see on TV.
Yeah.
When it's having to do with more of those vulnerable populations that we're looking to protect. So.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
Sheriff, Chief, you guys were around when we started this position. So what did that look like, and how did this come to be at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office?
Well, as with most federal programs, there was a carrot involved, which was money, and they would fund a position if we would dedicate that position to the investigation of crimes against women. And so we agreed to do that. Over the years, that funding has diminished somewhat. It doesn't fund that position totally, but it does provide some funding for that investigative position, and it's been very beneficial. And that's always the goal with those federal programs, is they'll get you started, and if you see it's beneficial and want to keep it going, then you'll find the funding for it locally.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that this isn't a very important. I'm sad that it's needed, but it is position, and it's one of our 5-year spots, I believe, off the top of my head, that they stay there and learn that position, because there's a lot to learn and do. We used to have them do the interviews of the children.
Right.
Now that's changed some, and I think the Be Brave is the ones that do it. BraveBe. Sorry. That's my dyslexic going there, but anyway,
you meant what we knew.
Yes, very, very much. But what they get to do, and it's a hard job. And you start working with kids, especially when you have kids that age or near that, and having to deal with the horrid things that they've gone through. You can go home and give your kids a hug and be thankful that they're safe.
When Ben said it's a 5-year position, that means it's a deputy's in there for 5 years, and then they have to rotate out. And I do remember one of the investigators coming into my office a couple or 3 years into their stint in the position, and said, I just can't do this anymore. I can't. The things that we're hearing about, seeing about with children, I'm done. And so I said, okay, we'll rotate you out, and we did. And that really is an individual choice. There's only so much some folks can take, and
I didn't like it. I mean, I worked with Chad when he was doing it, and had to help him on some cases, and I'd take some, if he wasn't there. But I could tell just from the little bit that I did, man, this is wearing me out.
Well, that, and you get into some of the sexually explicit things that are on videos, and what you end up having to watch, and you have to do that to make the case. And after a while, it just plain gets old and makes you sick.
Yeah.
It can wear on you, and I think very quickly, depending on what kind of case you're working on, you might need to just say, well, I'm going to leave
Yeah.
the room.
So
I need to step away today.
So what do you do to manage that?
I do think that that's I do think it's important to like reach out to someone if you feel comfortable talking to someone. And I actually right now have a really good group of people in criminal investigations with me that have years of experience with all different kinds of investigations. And I've been willing to talk with them about things and bounce ideas off each other, as well as kind of like what you said, just going home to my own kids, hugging them, doing things outside of work. But there was seriously one day that I was like, I just need to walk away from what I'm looking at for a little while.
Yep. And I think the thing for me, and you get this a little bit in just generally in law enforcement, but especially when you're in that line of work, what I've found is you have to make sure that you have balance and you're interacting with normal people and normal stuff, because it's really easy to go down that slippery slope of just thinking that, everybody's a criminal or that's all you're seeing, is just the bad stuff. And so you kind of have to just step away from that for a while.
Yep.
The good thing too, I think our criminal division is they kind of go after cases, especially big ones, as a team. And I think we're lucky enough that we are able to do that, and we can throw, again, a lot of resources at those, and that one person doesn't get stuck with the whole thing on that.
Yeah, and then they can kind of debrief together.
Yes.
And,
And so that, we have funding for that position, but did we say it was a percentage?
I believe it is now, but I can't remember what percentage is now. But I think it, like I said, it diminished over time from full-time allocation, and it has diminished somewhat. So
I guess the nice thing is that this is your full-time job, but there's still other cases that you get to work. So, I mean, you talked about the sex assaults, child abuse, domestic assaults, things like that. But what are some of the other cases that you've helped on since you've been?
That I've helped on?
Yeah.
Oh,
or just some you've been assigned to. I mean, I think you were just working on an animal abuse.
I had an animal abuse case. I've had a couple of those actually. So, which I feel like still falls under the...
I suppose a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, between animal and children, people really seem to care out in the public on those.
Yes, and it's very much that, like, speak for someone who doesn't have a voice.
Sure.
Anyway, so I've had a couple of those, and then I've been able to help on, we've had some homicides that have ended up in our county recently, and so I've been able to help out with those. I've been able to help out with some of my cases have even blended into others where, I had a case that was an abuse that then turned into a case with the parent also being involved in other crimes that we've been working on. So
well, you've definitely gotten a ton of experience just in the short time that you've been in there so far. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
What does a day at your desk look like? And I say your desk, you're not always at your desk.
Right.
A lot of times that you barely even see your desk. So what does a day in your shoes look like? Maybe is a better way to ask that question.
Yes. So it depends on which day. Because like you said, sometimes I am gone. Sometimes I am gone all day. If we have a case that comes in that our criminal investigations team goes out on, even if I'm not the lead investigator, I will go and be like support. I will run wherever I need to run, neighborhood canvas, things like that. Some days I'm gone at the Child Advocacy Center. If we do have interviews, I'll go over there. Lots of phone calls, lots of emails, and lots of report typing.
Yeah.
That's my day.
No, I get it.
Well, the funny thing, you watch these programs on the cop shows and all this, and they're putting people in jail right away and going out to the next one. And that's just, that's probably about 10% of what you're doing. The rest of it's reports and doing follow-up and doing all the things to make that case so solid that...
to make sure that they go to jail.
That they get the conviction.
How about training? What sorts of training have you done for your role? Just for people that might be hearing this for the first time and say, someday I want to do something like that. What kind of training have you done, and what kind of training are you still looking to do?
So I actually have been really lucky with training. I've gotten to some really good trainings that are supportive of my position. I've taken several trainings about human trafficking. I think it's been something that's in the last couple of years has really been brought into the limelight. Really, people are starting to realize that this is not like, taken where you're just in some foreign country, that this is happening here in our own backyard. And I think I've been trying to take a couple of those because with things like, we have a pretty massive football following. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Yeah.
Sporting events.
They don't win all the time.
I
But
know. So we still follow them, but
Yeah.
and then like with the casino opening, these types of things can really add to a problem like human trafficking. And so knowing about that so that we can talk with our deputies and people that are on patrol that are running into people day in and day
you
out.
talk about that, but like the College World Series is one I know up in Omaha, and the Super Bowl is probably one of the biggest problems in that issue.
Just anytime that they have a major event.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be just sports, but anytime you have a major event, unfortunately, sometimes these bad actors, whether they're here already or they come to town, they have clients that they're trying to, they're trying to connect with.
Right.
And so that's
it just makes a larger forum.
Yeah, and people get trafficked to and from here, and that's what we're trying to combat. So
well, and with having the interstate, we have a major interstate running through here too. So that's a big thing. So I've been lucky to take several trainings on that, and some federal ones as well. And then I've had a couple trainings on child abuse and child death, which is unfortunately something that hopefully, we're not running into, but in this career, it's the reality that it might. I've had some interviewing and kind of on the same line as the trafficking, that how to talk to survivors of these things because they're not going to trust law enforcement. So that's something new. I had a really good training that I took that was on kind of the mind of sociopath, psychopath people and how that can portray into domestic violence situations.
How they manipulate and control folks.
Yes, I've had a lot of really good ones, really, really good ones.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Captain John Vik with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. When it comes to your career, don't settle for good enough. Don't settle for ordinary. We won't either. Be different, be better, be exceptional. Start your future today at joinlso.com. We talked about BraveBe a little bit ago, and that's a big partner that we work with and has been for a long time. So yes, we used to have investigators that were trained in forensic interviews of children.
Yeah, they go down to Mobile, Alabama, and get the training down there.
Okay. And that was kind of I think when we had Paige on, she was talking, I think, maybe about that. That's kind of where things started, that model, the CAC model. And Sheriff, you've been on the board for a long time.
Yes.
With that. But so Joanna, now they have full-time interviews. I mean, it's sad that we have enough of these that they need full-time interviewers. But talk to us about your role and how you interact with them. We talked with Paige when she was on. That was several episodes ago. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but how does that look for you on the investigative side now?
Well, I mean, we're interacting with each other every time we have a case like this, but it's also good because we have that working relationship, and it's nice for families coming in trying to navigate through these things or help support their kids. It's helpful to them in the sense that like law enforcement's not hanging in your face all the time, reminding you of what's going on. You have an advocate that's there to support the family, to help them find services, things like that, as well as the interviewers can talk with me without me having to go in there. And I just think, especially to a child that's going through something traumatic, having law enforcement in your face sometimes can be really difficult, or they feel like they're in trouble and it's harder for them to communicate. So it's important that we have a place like BraveBe where these people are there to kind of be that.
And the advocates go to court with them.
Yes,
every
that
step,
too. Yeah.
Every step in the proceedings. So if the victim's going to have to testify, they've got an advocate there with them.
Well, that's the reason why we have the policy the way we do, that we don't interview these kids, and that we set it up with the CAC and have them do that so they're not getting traumatized over and over and over again. And
right. And that's the idea too, is that you have the hopefully we can use the recording instead of having to put these kids in a courtroom full of people to tell this traumatic event over again.
Yeah. The victims that you're working with in your position, they're just different than our other crime victims. I mean, it's always sad anytime that anybody's a victim of a crime, but there's just different dynamics that go into it, especially when you have kids and other considerations that we have to be sensitive to. So,
when we had the BraveBe executive director page was here and did a podcast as well, but we talked a little bit about how we handled child victim crimes before the CAC concept. And, we'd bring them down here and put them in an interview room just like we would an adult. And if you can imagine a small child being in one of those interview rooms, they're pretty sterile, kind of scary. You might have an officer in uniform or not, but certainly probably armed. And, it's just really intimidating for children to do that.
Yeah.
And like you said, think they're in trouble.
Yeah, it feels like you're in trouble, especially from that perspective.
Yep.
And then just at an age to mentally be able to handle some of these, that situation, be able to deal with it.
Huntsville, Alabama is where it started.
That's it.
Thank you.
On the investigative side, though, I mean, the CAC is just one piece of a much bigger investigation for you. So you don't just stop at the CAC. What are other things that you're factoring in on your cases and doing after you leave the CAC?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are times too during a CAC interview where we might start to recognize that whatever has happened to this child, that maybe there's other victims of that. And so we're seeking them out to try to support them as well. And then I'm also in charge then of going to talk with the perpetrator and see what we have there too. So.
And if necessary, make the arrest.
Yes.
Yeah. And seeing it through to the court process.
Yep.
So what would you say, why is your job important to you? And what kind of satisfaction do you take away from the work that you do?
Well, part of it is a lot of the cases that I'm working, especially if we're talking about, whether we're talking about a child victim or, a domestic violence survivor, a sexual assault survivor, these are things that even adults struggle to process through. Like, it's an extremely traumatic event. And so to have somebody that's there to walk through it with you, or to even just be the person that says, I believe you, is a huge thing to someone, no matter what they're going through. As well as I feel like I'm doing something that can make my kids proud, that can be something to inspire them to care for others as they grow up. And I think it's a necessary evil sometimes, my position. So
yeah, I could see how that makes sense. Just in the grander scheme of things, and Sheriff and Chief, you guys chime in too. How do you think that our VAWA investigative position makes Lancaster County safer?
Well, I think first off, we do better quality investigations, and that's really important, and it's important to good prosecutions. But I think really the more important part is supporting the victims, and making sure that victims are treated like victims, that that we don't further traumatize them. That's the whole goal of the CAC concept, is not to further traumatize the victim of crime, and so I think it's very helpful.
Well, one, you get an expert in the field. So, like, we have purchased cameras that are highly expensive that are able to show bruising better on victims. And we get this individual, the investigator, who knows, okay, I need to do A, B, C, D, and they know how to make that case as strong as possible. And when you work them all the time, you become very good at it. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that we can help the victims, is we have somebody who is a specialist in that field and that knows exactly how to go about investigating it, what information they need to prove the case, and working with the prosecutors so that the case is worked. And the person, if they ended up being the perpetrator, that they get convicted of the crime.
yeah.
And Joanna, sometimes, especially when we're getting into major crimes and investigations, you only get one shot at stuff. And sometimes you only have one shot, whether it's an interview or an interrogation, something like that. But especially with the kids, we don't want to re-traumatize them and make them have to tell their story any more than they already need to. And so I think you being as proficient and having as many reps, although it's unfortunate, but that certainly provides a service to Lancaster County. When bad things happen, that there's professionals that answer the phone. So
Yeah.
But anything else that closing thoughts on the VAWA position or things you've picked up in your time there?
I do. Well, I guess I'm mirroring what you said. I do think it's a extremely valuable position and necessary one, unfortunately. But I also think once you go all the way through that court process, the reality is sometimes it doesn't end the way that we want. As law enforcement, as prosecutors, and sometimes as your survivor, but to be able to at least go through this with them and be the person that says, I believe you, is really important to me.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, and we didn't talk about, the domestic cycle of how that works with, how many times do these people have to go through the honeymoon stage, and then, they get along, and then an issue and an incident occurs, and it happens, and it just keeps going on, and just trying to break that cycle so that they can get out. I mean, maybe the person doesn't get convicted of what you want, but if the victim can get broke away from that situation and start a better life, then I think we've won a big battle at that point.
That is the idea. Is did we give that survivor a chance to find safety, find whatever it is they needed to.
Yeah, a lot of times they're beat down so bad they don't even know how or what to do to help themselves, and just having somebody there grab them by the hand and give them the strength to get out, and then help have them grow at that point is just huge at that, just to get them out of that cycle. Because sometimes they get in there and financially, and they have kids, and there's just no way out for them.
Yeah.
Well, I know sometimes, thinking back to my criminal days, you would have follow-ups on some things that were kind of victimless crimes. And it was hard to maybe make a connection with, am I really making a difference? But you're certainly at no shortage of being able to find that connection with victims, because all of your cases matter.
Yeah.
So, well, that's really cool. And we really appreciate all the work that you and your entire team are doing in there to advocate and
Thank you. Yes.
and protect victims for Lancaster County.
We have a good team.
Yeah. 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, because it takes a special person, and I know you put in for it, and you went to some training and do that. This job that you do is not for everyone, but I'm glad we have.
I don't think so.
We have people here that are able to do it, and that's another reason why a diverse employee pool helps, because not everybody's going to be good at every aspect of this game or this job, and you doing this is extremely important work, and I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of today's episode of the 902 Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to catch other episodes of the 902 Podcast, be sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. If you're interested in career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, check out www.joinlso.com. Our deputy hiring process is open, taking applications up until December 31st. Be sure to get your application in prior to that closing date if you'd like to apply. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and pretty much anywhere else in the social sphere. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode. Catch you on the next one. Have a good day.